Welcome to another edition of WCG Presents, and we have a really creepy show for you tonight. I'm even grinning because it's going to be great. We have a co-host tonight, Mark Pacheco, and we're going to be going over some really creepy reverse EVP because we've gotten quite a bit of that over the years, and they're usually kind of negative intent to those, so we're going to actually go over some of these EVPs tonight and see how you like them, if you find them as creepy as we do. This example of EVP came from Lizzie Borden's Bed and Breakfast in Fall River, and this one was recorded back in 2007. We'll kind of go through the history a little bit here with you. And this was actually taken in the Abbey murder room when one of the other really famous ones that we have from Lizzie Borden's was recorded. This was the same night. Now this EVP that was recorded in the Abbey murder room, when you play it forward, it says, "Why don't you go F yourself?" And years later, we actually took this one and reversed it just because of the intent of this. And we found that it says, "We want more information." And when you hear it, it's almost clearer backwards.
The EVP that we're about to show you was recorded in Freetown State Forest, which some believe to be an abode of evil. And when you listen to it, it'll make you think. It's very easy to hear what it's saying. At least the first part says having trouble with that. And then the next part is very unclear. She's really part reminiscent or remnant, where we hear that and we think, okay, maybe there is something in the reversal. It makes its point better when it's played backwards. Are they thinking backwards? It really gets to the heart of what's actually producing these things and how they're generated, which is still a mystery to us.
Sometimes they blow my mind how you get one thing reverse and it's something totally different that doesn't have even the same sounds, and it sounds great backwards, so I sometimes think it's purposely done.
Backwards, they ripped off the English. Now they were white men. But obviously they wouldn't have spoken that way if they were colonial era Indians. It makes us wonder even more, what is the actual source of these things? Is it something negative?
It's funny you say that, because anyone from a different standpoint from the English would maybe say that, because are they considering that the colonists ripped off the English of the land?
Over here, the response to the name.
Oh, that's right.
Now this is another one that came out of Freetown State Forest, and it sort of is a little bit on the intimidating side, because I'm actually speaking to someone that I believe may have been involved with the cult murders, and they're telling us that they're not a man. "I am no man" is the forward version of this particular EVP. And then we turn it around backwards, and that's where it really gets strange. And I have been finding this happens a lot over the years that I've been doing EVP, is sometimes you've got something that sounds like it could possibly be two different things. And sometimes when I play this one in reverse, I hear "I am no man," the same thing it says forward. Other times I'm hearing "now they're ready." And sometimes I hear them both at the same time, which you hear it more often, I think, at the same time. So, you know, we're here in the paranormal and we get things like this, and we already can't explain EVP completely yet. We talk about a lot of possibilities, and then you get things like this where you're getting so many messages all at once.
Now, referring to the cult murders, of course, she's referring to the infamous murders in the 70s and 80s that were linked to a satanic cult that was based along the South Coast at that time, which of course there were women that were murdered in the Freetown State Forest, which is another reason why people think that it's an abode of evil. It's not really interesting, this one here, because when you listen to it, if you're listening for one thing, you hear that. If you're listening for another, you hear that. Sounds like it's saying "I am no man" and "now they're ready," both at the same time. So it's very interesting.
More research. How about you, Carl Davis, you piece of work?
This next one that we have taken in a private location in Fairhaven, it's an example of something in reverse can be completely different from what it is forward. Forward it says "bad finger," and in reverse we believe it says "I need that" or "we need that." It's just another example of a very clear, very pronounced voice, and it is very clear in reverse as well.
The next one is, again, we just recently did a series of investigations in Freetown State Forest, so we do have a lot of really interesting things that are more negative intention. And this one is another one that, when you play it forward, it really doesn't sound all that intimidating or derogatory or anything. It's when you reverse it, and this is something that in the years doing paranormal investigation, there's a lot of nasty ghosts out there that, you know, will try to say things to be mean, call you names, you know, make derogatory comments towards the investigators, and, you know, I think that they do have ill intent towards investigators, especially such as our team, where we do house blessings and we do try to help people with the negative side. So I do have a feeling that they don't really like us and what we do, and that's why a lot of times many of the EVPs, when we reverse them, have some kind of threat or bad intent to them. And when you play this one forward, it sounds like, hey, maybe it could have something to do with the Underground Railroad, or, you know, this area is rampant with that. We have many abolitionists and hubs along the Underground Railroad. So color is not on our skin. Sounds okay. Then you reverse it, and it's actually being derogatory directly towards me. Luann still wants it, and it is probably being very, you know, negative towards me, in other words.
That one there is interesting, just the forward part, because it's saying color is not on our skin. Is it an actual ghost of a deceased person who sees past the idea of race? Or is it something that never was human to begin with and they have no race? They are aracial, in other words. Yep. It begs the question of where, again, these voices are actually coming from.
Well, they also say these things are not male or female either, that, you know, it's very hard for us to look at that as humans, because we're humans and we perceive in certain ways.
There are a lot of these voices that we get that it sounds like a female impersonating a male or a male impersonating a female, and those are very disturbing. There's one that was taken right at Fort Taborn, south end of New Bedford. Forwards, it's very confusing. Quite a time, I believe, trying to figure out what it meant, because it refers to Pope Park, which is not in New Bedford. But being as it's very confusing forwards, we took it and reversed it, and quite clearly it says, "Why are you standing there?" It may take a couple of listens to actually hear that, because the words are kind of garbled on top of each other. But I believe it does say, "Why are you standing there?" Which is direct.
Well, we can
question.
put that on the Facebook page too. I've been putting them up on the Facebook so that people can come and listen with headphones and hear them.
Right.
You know how I am. I feel like anyone can learn to hear EVP. They just need to practice it. But the strange thing, like you say, is that Pope Park is not in New Bedford. It's actually in Acushnet, where I grew up. So I thought, well, could this be somebody that I know in my lifetime? But then again, when you hear it reversed, I don't think it really actually has anything to do with Pope Park. It's just that was a way to get attention from the investigators present, and there was a double message in that one.
The next one here, it's actually saying, "I saw you F." And in reverse, it says one or two things: "Aren't we awesome?" or "We all saw," which is reinforcing the message that it sent forwards. Either way, it's being insulting to the person recording it.
Well, I do feel like they know what we do. You know, this isn't the first time I've heard. I've been called every name in the book, believe me. You know, it's not the first time that I've seen them being derogatory or assaultive.
We've actually seen EVPs where they're making fun of people who don't take this seriously, and it's quite revealing to us just hearing things like that, because it actually gives you a point of view of the spirit or mechanism or intelligence that is producing these voices.
And how they look at us. I think some of them do actually see us as a direct threat. And you to tell me your name. Again, we're in Freetown State Forest with this next EVP, and it's one of those double messages again. It says one thing in forward, one thing in reverse. And at first, when I hear it, the had to be done, I was actually speaking about Karen Marsden, who was probably the worst victim that the cult had murdered, because we still haven't found Karen Marsden's body. She was identified by her jewelry and by her skull fragments, and actually the testimony of one of the murderers who's in prison today. But then you reverse it and it says not yet. So I'm not sure if the two are related or if they are, you know, intoning against Karen's murder, but it's still a little disturbing to hear that, you know, when you're talking about someone who was murdered and you hear them say had to be done. And in the cult's point of view, they probably felt like it had to be done because Karen was turning state witness. She had already been to the police and she was going to testify against the cults.
That one there is very strange, because whether it was a passed on member of the cult that is speaking to us from beyond the grave, or a passive observer, some hidden intelligence, is just creepy.
It's great during the day to go there. There's tons of things to do.
There's no evil.
Not during the daytime.
Unless you're looking for it.
Well, we were not exactly looking for it, but we found it.
Moving on.
Now, the next one is an example of foul language in the English speech. And it's kind of weird. It sounds very consonant-y, if that's a word. When you hear it, it's a strange kind of whisper almost, and it says you're all left up. And I do think that they're being, once again, derogatory towards the investigators that are there. And then you take it and you reverse it, and it's kind of creepy. It almost reminds me of like the guy who's bringing the candy to the tree. Here's some candy. We got something for you, but
yeah, I'm sure they do.
not anything we want. I
it's
feel
an
like
interesting
I
point
do
you
feel
raised
like
with the last
Saturday
one
Night
about
Live.
the form of the speech. It's analyzing speech is really important to analyzing EVP. You want to go syllable by syllable. With one of the more well-known EVPs, it's been played on multiple national TV shows by other people. You know, it was an extra syllable long, and no one ever noticed that or thought to actually take another look at that and play it in reverse until we did, and got a completely different message. It was just as clear as it was forwards.
Heard that.
Now, the next one here is interesting that it sounds very similar forward and backwards. It's a one-word message. Burn or we burn. Just take a listen because this one will creep you out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I think almost everybody on the team hears something different with this one, and it's just totally creepy. Listen to that one, you'll get creeped out. You'll have nightmares tonight. Again, here we are in the Freetown State Forest, and one of the investigators, well, actually, we were all female on this particular night, and one of our investigators, Vicky, asked how the spirits felt about having all of us women in the forest to investigate them, and their answer was a little on the nasty side, because when you play it forward, they're calling her a puss, and then turn it around backwards, and it says slut.
Oof.
So yeah, that wasn't very nice, guys.
These things just love to insult.
Definitely.
That's why I'm thinking more and more that these aren't just passed on people who have passed on. There's something else there. There's a hatred and a mockery there.
Oh, definitely. Well, I could tell you some stories, guys. Yeah, they definitely don't like whatever these things are. In some of these cases, they do not like humans.
Women coming out here and talking to you.
We also have one here that it may just be giving us some tips, because forwards it says behind you, and reverse it says wake up or look up. So this one here is not necessarily negative or anything, it's just interesting.
I wasn't sleeping on the job either. I was fully awake, taking readings and everything, but it might have been because a lot of times when I'm on investigation, I admit it, I get feelings when ghosts are around me, things like that, but I'm the leader of a team now, so I have to pay attention to what's going on, and I sort of shut that down. So I don't know, maybe that was what it was talking about, like wake up psychically, do.
Because they had more to tell.
Oh, I think they have a lot to tell. Don't know how many more times we'll go now out to the Freetown State Forest, but it is an interesting piece of research, I gotta say. Now, the next couple EVPs on the list are definitely not for the faint of heart, because I really do get a feeling that this next one, they are specifically speaking about Satan.
And it is clear as day.
No, yes, it's actually more clear in reverse, I think, because sometimes when I listen to it forward, I hear clearly Edna Frank, the name. And sometimes I kind of think it says had no friends. It's another one of those doubles.
We're thinking, okay, if it's Edna Frank, okay, let's go and try to research and see if we can find her in a historical record. But played backwards, no, that's not the case at all.
No, Fear the Goat is what it says in reverse, and it's really creepy, and I do think it is referring to Satan.
Next, we're getting back to how these intelligences or voices feel about those who choose to investigate this and help people, such as paranormal investigators. This one was from a private home here in New Bedford. Forward, it says, don't think you get to party, or don't think you came to party, in a nice sing-song, sweet little female voice. But backwards, it says, we love to get you people. And I'm sure they did, because this particular home had been investigated by at least 3 other teams in the past, none of which helped the gentleman, and all of which treated it like a game. This person or thing, whatever you want to call it, knew that we were there for the same purpose, but thought that we were going to act the same as these other teams did, and they just loved to get us people. But we operate a little differently than that, and we actually helped that gentleman.
I think they should know better than that when it comes to what we do out
with the help
there.
of our good friend,
And I
Reverend
do
Ed.
actually hear that one a little bit differently, because I don't get the L consonant. I hear we come to get you people, but either way, I mean, this poor guy, he had been going through that for years and tried many teams, and it sounded from his reports like they all took it like a joke, or were scared and intimidated and would not come back. So I'm glad things are
We
going
helped him
better
out
for
with
him.
the help of our friend, Reverend Ed. With these reversed EVPs, you can't deny it that playing these things backwards sometimes comes out with a clearer message than what it's saying forwards. So you've got to stop and think, before I go out there and do this, you need to be ready for it. You need to be spiritually ready, I think is really important, because these things seem to be negative and possibly demonic. As to how they're generating it, I haven't the foggiest. We need more research, more analysis, definitely. More people going out and recording and bringing those to light. What do you think, Luann?
Whew, this is opening up this huge can of worms, because there's so much just to figuring out how we get a normal EVP, never mind one of these more negative ones. With a human spirit, we sort of have come to believe that there is some part of our energy, or part of our being, that is left over and for whatever reason does not go on to whatever's next. There's energy or a string or something there that could possibly maybe account for the vibrations that we would need to be able to record this.
Maybe further research into physics and the makeup of the universe might actually blow this open. Maybe it's some form of dark matter that's making these happen. We don't know what the mechanism is.
When I look at, because I definitely put these entities in different categories. There's, your residual ghost, there's your aware spirit that's interacting with us, and then you have these really negative things that some call demons or negative entities, or, I actually think that they're probably coming through in the same way, except for maybe the residual. The residual hauntings are kind of like in their own category.
It's tough because we need to start somewhere with this, and it's been dismissed by so many scientists over the last century. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start with observation. You have to start, it's like being out in the jungle observing apes. You have to start with observations before you can have laboratory experiments. You have to start categorization. We're like in the early days of the periodic table, where they only had a few, but they knew there were more.
Yeah, after over 100 years, we're
like
still
the early days of chemistry or biology, where they're grouping, families of species of animals and plants together. We're still in that very early stage. So while it's still rejected by a lot of mainstream science, there are a lot of open-minded people, including physicists out there, that acknowledge that there is something to this, and it's unfortunate that it's fallen on groups of dedicated amateurs around the world to do this. We're picking up the torch, basically.
I would actually love to be able to sit down with Stephen Hawking and have a conversation about the paranormal, because he is just, to me, he's like my hero, but he's one of the most open-minded people, because he's one of the forefounders of string theory, where we're admitting that everything is connected. And that right there is something that I think is very important to the paranormal, because, suppose these demon things that we call, negative entities, whatever, are from some far-off universe or dimension, and somehow through the strings can connect with our world. That's huge right there, that somehow another dimension could interact with us, and they say they're all right on top of each other.
Of some great discovery.
I think so.
Some people in the paranormal believe that it can never be explained by science. I disagree with that. I think that science isn't there yet, and if it falls on us and other groups like us to push the boundaries of science that much, to get it acknowledged by more dedicated researchers, then so be it.
Well, that's part of why we're also trying so many different things. You and I have a lot of conversations about different theories and the ways that we feel about the things that we experience all the time on investigation, and trying to find the right meters, the right equipment to try to actually measure these things more accurately is a big step. But part of it is just individuals going out there and keeping track of this. You can't just go out and, hey, I got an EVP. You got to keep track of what's going on.
That's a big insult hurled at the paranormal community, is that, well, none of these meters were designed to detect ghosts. We know that.
Right.
Of course they're not. What we're trying to do is observe the environment in as many ways as possible.
Definitely.
We want to narrow things down and try to find out what about the environment is different in these locations,
Definitely.
that people are experiencing things.
That's also something that most people don't understand is it's not like we can go to someone's haunted house and completely set it up like a laboratory and control every situation there. We
There are a lot
have
of factors.
absolutely no control of the environment or even the weather.
That's why it comes down to observation.
Definitely.
At this stage of the game, it's about observation and sharing those observations with other teams, other interested individuals,
All
and
of you.
the public such as yourselves.
That's part of why we're actually here to do what we're doing here. I mean, we're not TV stars. We're just people who go out and do a lot of
Speak for
investigations. And oh, sorry, he's a TV star. I'm just an investigator who kind of comes in here and talks to you for a little while.
Well, leaving you off with perhaps the creepiest EVP that we've heard in quite a while. This was from a prominent location right in downtown New Bedford. Forward, it sounds like it's insulting me personally because I was playing with one of our pieces of equipment, setting it off, and forwards we believe it says he's a simple brat or simple brat in the accent that it displays. We just had recently turned this one around just because it sounded strange to us. And we think it says sound asleep. So listen to this one and see if you can stay sound asleep tonight.
And make sure you keep your lights on. Check under your bed.
That's just me. For those of you viewing on cable, don't forget to look us up on YouTube. You can listen to a couple of extras that we're not allowed to show on TV.
Our lovely swear ones. So thanks once again for coming to Whaling City Ghost Presents. We're glad to have you as always. And thanks so much to Mark for coming down and being my co-host today. And we will see you next time, I hope, because you never know where Whaling City Ghost is going to end up next.